So we are obviously going through relatively difficult times economically, in the sense that inflation is relatively still high, although there is some really great news that we're going to share, so definitely listen through in a little bit. But inflation is still considered relatively high. The job market obviously has not been doing so well. I've heard that the tech industry is still going through a lot of layoffs. I can only speak for my particular industry. I'm in the events and entertainment industry, and between all of the strikes, the job market has actually been not just not well, but it's actually been pretty horrible right now, because I believe that, especially if you talk about the gig economy in my industry, our unemployment rate is over 50% right now. Basically, almost none of my coworkers are working, more or less. There's a few that are, but most of them are not working right now as a result because of this. But in light of a lot of this difficulty, including the fact that we obviously have also talked about how Americans have been expected to run out of money by the very end of this year. I already talked about that in another past video. I'll put that video at the very end screen if you're interested in checking out what's been going on in that particular world. So highly recommend watching that. You can watch it after this video. It's going to be a link at the end. But in spite of all of this difficulties, we have some really great news to share in today's update and video. And it's really because the CPI inflation was recently released, and it was really good. And I think that's actually one of the really great news to share. Now, there's some significance, so definitely, watch it, because we have to talk about. But the idea with the results is that the headline CPI inflation is now 3.2%, down from 3.7% back a month ago, back in September. That is really good. That's a lot of improvement, going from 3.7% to 3.2%. For a little bit of perspective is that at the height of the inflation rate during the pandemic era, the peak back in June 2022, it was at 9.1%. So we had a record high, and that was the record high inflation when it was at 9.1%. And now we've dropped to about a third of that, to only about 3.2%. And while the core inflation has also now dropped down from 4.1% to 4%, so from September to October, because we're reporting this in November, although this video is going to be relevant for the rest of this year into December. The idea is that, and maybe to clarify something is that the difference between the CPI and the core inflation is that one of them does not include things related to food and energy. So one of them calculates inflation with food and energy. The other one calculates inflation without food and energy. So this is relatively important to know, because food and energy is considered two of the categories or areas of just inflation, or just things that we have to buy in our lives that fluctuates very deeply. But the idea really is that the great news is that we are on a very great trajectory right now, at least in the world of solving our inflation situation. The goal right now is to hit about 2% inflation. So we're at about 3%. We're trying to hit 2%, but we are very close on the way here. So in today's video and episode, what I really want to talk about is just the significance about everything we just mentioned, what this means for us, what's the prediction, where do we go forward from here, because it's very important to know this, especially if you are an investor, if you're looking to make any big financial decisions, to know where our economy is headed. And ideas is that there's just a lot of stuff happening, and I think it's important to kind of just get some information to know what is physically happening. So with that being said, let's just get this video started. But as always, if you guys enjoy videos like this, remember to smash the like button. I mean, we are sharing really great news after all, so I think there's reason to smash the like button. Consider subscribing, hitting the bell. Feel free to leave a comment about what you think about anything at any time throughout this video. And with that being said, let's get this video started. So I want to start by maybe running through the categories, and several categories that, or the amount of inflation that each of these categories of life is currently experiencing right now through this graph right here. So instead of having to listen to me read every single category and the inflation numbers, you guys can basically see for yourself on the graph right here, right on the screen. But the idea really is that this graph is really meant to show all of the different categories that we spend things on in life, and about how much inflation has gone up this last month in October 2023. Food is now starting to cool off, which is the really, really great news, because food happens to be one of the biggest and most unavoidable expense, because we all have to eat to survive at the end of the day, while car prices have interestingly suffered one of the massive amounts of inflation, and randomly sporting events as well, according to this graph, has been suffering from massive inflation, so particularly massive inflation. So the idea is that food is starting to cool off, which is really, really great. Car prices are still struggling, sporting events are still struggling very, very drastically, but at least those are not necessarily necessities, whereas food is a very, very big necessity. Now, one of the really, really great news to also share on top of the other great news, so remember, if you guys haven't smashed the like button in light of all of this great news, consider doing it now, is that gas prices, which I know there's a lot of people that drive here, has fallen by about 5% last month. So we are now actually experiencing a level of deflation a little bit, where gases have actually gone down. Gas prices have gone down from an average of about $3.80 a gallon to now just roughly about $3.47 a gallon. So some areas of our economy are actually improving. So not only is it experiencing, not only are prices now starting to increase less, but some of them, they're actually starting to go down, and things are going to get cheaper again. So that's some really, really great news, because it's hopefully going to put some extra money in our pockets that we can now spend elsewhere into other areas of life. Now, I want to talk the rest about the predictions about going forward into 2024, is that right now at this current time, the really, really great news is that because of all of the great news that we've already shared about with inflation and how it's been improving and that finally it's coming down, is that it also means that it's anticipated that the Feds, according to the Feds, we are very, very likely now going to experience a soft landing. That means that we won't have to go through like hyperinflation or all sorts of potential economic problems that can pop up. What this really means is that it means that we're going to potentially be able to adjust smoothly, so we don't have to go through a lot of the potential economic problems that could pop up because of this particular soft landing. So with inflation finally getting a lot better, this is going to be very life-changing for our lives, because it means that the money that we currently have is going to be able to go further. This is especially true because it is a very, very well-known fact right now that obviously, again, as mentioned, I have a video at the end screen, is that Americans are starting to run out of money very, very soon. Feel free to comment your particular situation if you want to share any particular stories in the comments section down below. The idea really is that because of this particular reason, our money will be able to go a lot further. It means things will be a lot cheaper, or will be still going up, but just not as rapidly as it was going up at that time period. And because wages are also going up, but wages have not necessarily been able to keep up with inflation, with this situation now improving, hopefully now wages will be able to keep up with inflation and all of the situation that's going. Now, if you happen to be an investor of some kind, the other really great news about this is that it means that we're very, very likely to now start to see a reversal in the stock market, where maybe stocks are potentially going to go up again, and we finally officially bottomed. Obviously, nobody knows the future of the stock market. I know if you watch a lot of other YouTubers, there's a lot of people that say there's going to be a lag effect within the stock market, which is essentially where stocks still drop because there's kind of like a delayed effect of it, decreasing. But even if that was necessarily going to be the case, the prediction and foresight right now is that going into next year is that we might experience a little bit of a drop, but that the probability is that it's going to, even if it does drop in the short term, in the long term, it's going to bounce back and go up again. At least that's the foresight, assuming that inflation continues to increase or continues to improve. Because right now at this time, it's very possible that we can see inflation reverse again going forward into the next year. But at the trajectory that we are going through, it's improving, it's getting better, and there's positive bright light in the foresight of what's been happening right now. It's also very interesting because one of the also big predictions that's going to happen, and this one's a little bit political, so we're going to keep it a little bit objective, but the idea is that next year, is an election year. And I think it's really important to note that, because the reasoning why is that assuming if President Biden runs again, or whoever starts to run again on the Democratic Party, it's going to help a lot of people on the Democratic side look good, because, you know, it shows that they're making improvements with the economy. So this is just something I really want to point out there. It's not necessarily good news or bad news. It just depends who you support. If you support the Democrats, this is really great news because it's going to improve their image. If you don't support the Democrats, this is obviously not very good news. So I'm just going to deliver the information in a very objective way, so you guys can maybe feel free to comment or decide for yourself whether or not you think this is good or not so good news. Again, this is very subjective, so that's why I put it out there. Now, beyond this is that I think I just want to end this video now talking about the goals that the Fed has going forward, so you know what to prepare for entering into 2024. Now, the idea right now is that the goal that they're trying to reach is that inflation currently is going up by about 3.1%. The goal that they're trying to achieve is that they want inflation to only go up by about 2%, because it's actually healthy to have a little bit of inflation, because it shows that economic activity is, you know, we're being productive in our economy. It shows that, you know, we're making more money, things are healthy, but you just don't want inflation to go up too much. And I think that 2% is the goal right now, because that's considered the healthy level where we can start to see prices go up, because it means that people are making more money and, you know, productivity is increasing, but not so much up that things start to become out of control in terms of affordability and everything that's going on. So the plans that they really have going forward, according to the Feds, according to Jerome Powell, and according to a lot of resources, is that they're going to try to improve inflation even further. They're at the very near finish line. They're not at the finish line yet. There's still about I would probably say there's maybe about a year that they still have to go. But the idea is that there's also a lot of foresight that they might have stopped raising interest rates, officially ended the interest rate increases, which means that not only is there a lot of signs of improvement, but the idea really is that we are past the halfway point and on to almost, not quite yet, but almost the final stretch of this economic cycle. And I think that's probably the big thing to really take away from this particular videos. Next year is going to be relatively interesting because, again, presidential election, lots of things happening, you know, new rules and things are going to pop up. They're going to be trying to approve a lot of laws and things that, while they still have relative control inside of Congress, and just a lot of things that are happening. We still have to see what happens to inflation, because, again, nobody knows the future for sure. But that's at least the foresight, and the foresight is that it's looking good. And I think that's probably some bright news to share for everyone here. So that being said, that's really what I wanted to just share in today's video. So if you guys enjoyed that, thank you guys so much for watching to the end. If you guys enjoyed that, remember to smash the like button, consider subscribing, hitting the bell for similar videos like this. I'll leave some videos at the end screen so you guys can watch those if that's of interest, including one that talks about how Americans are running out of money. And with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Stay safe, stay well, and hope to see you guys next time. Thank you guys so much again.